Yo, what is going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and today we are hopping right back into our top 50 list. As you've probably seen the other videos by this point, we are on our new number that I always reveal after I reveal the player. So first of all, we're going to reveal who is the player at this spot, and that is none other than Reggie Miller. Now, we can reveal what number Reggie Miller is sitting at on my all-time list, and that is number 44. Now, before we get right into Reggie Miller, I'm going to need you guys to smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, also hit that notification bell, and feel free to comment your thoughts maybe at the end of the video or throughout the video about what you think on Reggie Miller personally. Without further ado, let's hop right into his career. So Reggie Miller was a five-time NBA All-Star in 1990, 1995, 1996, 1998, and the year 2000. And he made 3 All-NBA teams, all of them in which were All-NBA third team from 1995, 1996, and 1998. He was even a part of the 50-40-90 club in 1994. And when you hear a lot of these accolades, you might just think, oh, he was only a scorer, he was only a shooter, but that is far from true. That was his primary role, of course, but maybe his stats don't pop out, like he wasn't a great playmaker. He still was a really good playmaker. He still was a really good passer. The difference is he always had a point guard that was the distributor of the basketball during his time. From Vern Fleming to Michael Williams to Pooh Richardson to Mark Jackson over the years. And even those guys generated a lot of success as a distributor because of Reggie Miller. I mean, much like how we acknowledge Steph Curry and Klay Thompson for helping lead to the Warriors' great offenses over the years with their off-ball movement, Reggie Miller was the best example of this during the late 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s, except he didn't have a co-star doing that with him. As a defender, too, Reggie Miller was not a slouch by any means. In fact, here's a comparison between Miller and some of the greatest combo guards in NBA history in terms of defensive PIPM. So as we can see, Drexler is at a +1, Wade's at a +0.23, Reggie Miller is at a -0.53, Iverson at a -0.68, Ray Allen at a -0.7, and Kobe Bryant at a -0.79. Now, what does defensive PIPM stand for? Well, it's based on your player impact plus minus, and in this case, on the defensive end of the court. Now, as most people would say, Drexler and Wade are great defenders, as is Kobe Bryant. Of course, he had a plethora of teams where he was the sole form of success, which hurt his individual rating on the defensive end as well. But as we can see, Reggie Miller in this group of grades kind of falls average. And this isn't the ultimate stat to determine defensive impact by any means, but it does show that he was far from a liability on defense, especially when it came to the playoffs, where his defensive box plus minus rating is even higher than it was in the regular season. Now let's hop into his efficiency. And there is quite an argument to be made that Reggie Miller is arguably the most efficient offensive player in NBA history. In fact, he's only one of 7 players in NBA history to shoot over 60% true shooting for both the regular season and the playoffs for the entirety of his career. The others are Cedric Maxwell, Kevin McHale, Adrian Dantley, Kawhi Leonard, Stephen Curry, and Nikola Jokic. After finishing 11th in the league in true shooting percentage in 1988-1989, he would proceed to finish top 10 in true shooting percentage every year from 1989 to 2004. That's a total of 15 straight seasons, which to this day is the longest consecutive seasons in NBA history that a player's finished top 10 in this category. Over that stretch, he would be the league leader twice in 1990-1991 and 1993-1994. He would also finish in the top 20 for offensive box plus minus in 10 straight years from 1989 to 1999, and 8 of those seasons in which he finished in the top 10. A few other major stats to note is that in terms of box plus minus for his career, he was at a 3.5, which is ranked 47th all time. His 3.7 offensive box plus minus rating puts him 32nd all time. 174.4 win shares puts him 18th all time. 140.4 offensive win shares ranks him 9th all time. His .176 win share per 48 rating ranks him 51st all time. His 66.1 value over replacement player rating puts him 22nd all time. And personally, my favorite is the fact that he had a 121.5 offensive rating, which ranks him 4th all time and first among all retired players while playing in a significantly lower paced era. And also, we We mentioned on this channel how Alex English had a great part in his Nuggets offensive firepower, but at least when you look at Alex English, he always had another co-star scoring for a majority of the time during his prime years, such as Kiki Vandeweghe, David Thompson, Fat Lever, Dan Issel, and so on. Reggie was the lone star until about 2000, and by that time, he had taken a complimentary role, and he was still efficient, but he was kind of a third option at that point. And Reggie was displaying this efficiency while over the course of his prime years from about 1989 to 2001, he averaged over 20 points per game in 6 of those seasons, and averaged 20.6 points per game, 3.2 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists per game, and 1.2 steals per game on roughly 48, 40, 89 shooting splits. Not many other players can say that they've been that efficient in the three-point era. Now let's talk about his playoff career, because in the playoffs, Reggie Miller once again elevated his game. In fact, over his first 12 playoff appearances, he averaged over 30 points per game multiple times throughout his playoff runs, and over 20 points per game in 11 of 12 of these runs. The only one in which he didn't, he averaged 19.9 points per game. Such a crime, right? And also, as I was just mentioning, his 1989 to 2001 regular season performances in terms of scoring, where he averaged 20.6 points per game over that stretch, well, he averaged 20.6 points per game over his entire playoff career, including his last few years. From 1990 until 2001, aka his prime level years, he scored over 20 points per game in 19 of 22 playoff series. And in the 3 series that he didn't, in terms of how good defensively all those teams were, all of them had a lower defensive rating than 100 and were top 4 defensive teams for the entirety of that season. Now, of course, you never want to play bad in the playoffs, but I think that it's pretty excusable when you're playing some of the greatest defensive teams of all time. He would also shoot over 45% from the field in 55% of his playoff series, and he would shoot over 40% from 3 in over 64% of his playoff series. As for the free throw line, he shot over 90% from the free throw line in 10 of 22 series, and only shot below 80% from the free throw line once among the 22 playoff series he played during this stretch. And to take it up a notch, he averaged over 25 points per game over 9 of these series, and over 30 points per game in 3 of these series, and once again, one of the lowest paced eras in NBA history. Now, in terms of his career playoff success, he would make the Eastern Conference Finals 6 times over his career, and the NBA Finals once in 2000. Now remember, this was arguably the toughest version of the Eastern Conference in NBA history, mainly dominated by Jordan's Bulls, with other great teams to compete with Reggie's Pacers, such as Patrick Ewing's Knicks, Alonzo Mourning's Heat, and Shaq's Magic, to give a general idea of the East during this decade. And with the exception of the 1999 series against the Knicks, Reggie showed up for the rest of those series. Statistically, one could maybe argue 1998 against the Bulls, but the game had slowed down a lot with the Bulls' lower-paced playoff nature, and in Game 7, Reggie still put up 22 points on 75% true shooting, so you can't really hold much against him there. Also, they were the lower seed, so it's not like they were expected to win by any means, even though Reggie himself did think that they had a really good chance against Chicago that year. But they were in 1999 against the Knicks. And talking about his 2000 NBA Finals, Reggie would lead the Pacers with 24.3 points a game, 3.7 assists a game, 2.7 rebounds a game on 41% shooting from the field, 38% shooting from 3, and about 98% shooting from the free throw line, with a +6 net rating, even though they lost in 6 games. Because ultimately, Rick Smits and Dale Davis had no answer for Shaq in arguably his most dominant playoff series ever. Another interesting detail is that even Reggie Miller thought that this wasn't the best version of the Pacers team that they had during one of his prime years. I'm sure he would probably lean toward maybe the 94-95 seasons when the Bulls were missing Michael Jordan, maybe even that 1998 team like we talked about, but it wasn't this 2000 team according to Reggie himself. So when recapping Reggie Miller on an all-time list, he has got to be labeled as underrated. Many people say he isn't top 50 because he wasn't an elite two-way player, or he didn't win a ring, or he didn't have flashy numbers outside of his scoring ability, and maybe even that wasn't too flashy. But he had insane leadership, and he had insane loyalty, insane efficiency, insane longevity, insanely underrated defense. Not saying it was great, but it's definitely underrated. And also insane mental toughness, because any single era you put him in, he's going to dominate. He's not going to be fazed by anything. His insane three-point shooting would thrive in today's era. I personally think he's a top 3 three-point shooter of all time. And was insanely clutch. I mean, Every real NBA fan knows about the 8 points in 9 seconds at the Garden in 1995, or the year before against the Knicks where he dropped 25 points in the fourth quarter of a Game 5 that year, which was the third highest scoring fourth quarter by a single player in NBA history, behind only Sleepy Floyd and Allen Iverson. Or his shots in multiple years against my own Chicago Bulls, the one with the bow and the other with the instant celebration where he jumped up in the air, the 41 points against Milwaukee in 2000, the consecutive efficient 30-point games to sweep Atlanta in 1995, and the list goes on. What you need to realize is Reggie Miller is more than just a scorer or a shooter. Although thanks to his insane efficiency, you could maybe make an argument that he's a top 10, 15, top 20 scorer in NBA history. I don't think that's too far-fetched to say. And he was a championship level leader and was one of the most impactful offensive players in NBA history. And even as we were going over a bunch of the advanced analytics, he kind of dominated just about every single one on the offensive end. So you need to give him your respect. But guys, I think that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Again, hit the notification bell. And let me know what you think about Reggie Miller. Do you think I kind of hit this one right on the nail, or do you think that I was far off as can be? But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for the other videos to come in this top 50 list. So I'm out of here. Peace.